because I know what happened. And you need me to figure it out, what happened. If you don't have me, you don't know what happened.
In Chelmsford, Essex, England, Merrick Heko murdered a man on July the 25th of 2022, then returned to the scene of the crime intoxicated, telling police that he knew something about what had happened months earlier. In May of 2022, the 26-year-old and his girlfriend at the time, Stephanie Bream, split up after a 7-month relationship. Following the breakup, Heko repeatedly messaged her and allegedly started exhibiting stalking behaviors. The woman subsequently moved on and began dating 44-year-old Adrian Ellingford. In the early hours of July the 25th, Bream and Ellingford were asleep at her home in Nelson Grove. Her new boyfriend suddenly collapsed at the end of the bed after a knife was plunged into his back twice. Essex police were called to the scene at around 4:30 a.m. When emergency crews arrived, they attempted to resuscitate the victim but were unsuccessful. Heko, who was carrying a bottle of brandy, approached an officer guarding the scene from the public outside the property. Body cam footage showed the suspect swaying and slurring as he talked to the officer. Heko said he knew everything about the crime and added that the city was his. At around 7:40 a.m., he was arrested for being confrontational, according to the police. While in custody, he was identified as a suspect in Ellingford's killing. During his trial at Chelmsford Crown Court on February the 13th of 2023, Heko claimed that he turned up at the scene that day after he'd heard what had happened on the news. However, a month later, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison with a 26-year minimum term. Number 8. Robert Chapman. Robert Chapman, rioter during the U.S. Capitol attack on January the 6th of 2021, was turned into the authorities by an online dating app user he matched with. The 50-year-old New Yorker made sure to make note of his presence at the U.S. Capitol while chatting with his Bumble match. His messages contained unsolicited confessions that said, "I did storm the Capitol." He added that he made it all the way into Statuary Hall and that he was later interviewed by media organizations. The Bumble user replied to his message saying that they weren't a good match for each other. The user then provided screenshots of the conversation to law enforcement on January the 13th. According to investigators, the information was corroborated after they compared body camera footage from police officers who were inside the Capitol to the suspect's profile picture on Bumble. He also had Facebook posts, one of which openly stated that he was inside the Capitol and another that contained a photo of him in front of a statue that was inside Statuary Hall. On April the 22nd of 2021, Chapman was arrested and charged with 4 misdemeanors, including disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. In May of the following year, he was given 3 months of house arrest to be followed by 18 months of probation. Additionally, he was ordered to pay a fine and restitution of $1,200, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Number 7. Aya Abish. On September the 27th of 2016, an intoxicated 22-year-old was arrested for hitting a cyclist while driving her brand new car in Costa Mesa, California. Hours before the incident, Aya Abish from Laguna Beach posted a photo on Instagram in which she was standing next to a gray Mercedes-Benz adorned with a large red bow. She reportedly described it as her new pride and joy. At around 10:40 p.m. in the area of 19th Street and Monrovia Avenue, Abish struck a bicyclist with her luxury sedan, then fled the scene. The victim suffered leg injuries but was able to give a description of the vehicle involved when officers arrived. A few minutes later, the suspect was pulled over and failed a sobriety test. The cops found damage to the car that was consistent with the accident. Abish was thus arrested on suspicion of felony hit and run and driving under the influence. Shortly after she was apprehended, her post about the new car was deleted and her account was made private. Number 6. Marlis Valencia Martinez. Colombian woman Marlis Valencia Martinez was arrested on September the 21st of 2022 for allegedly stealing more than $32,000 worth of jewelry from a man in Miami, Florida. Months prior, on December the 4th of 2021, 39-year-old Martinez traveled to Miami to visit the man after they'd been speaking online for 2 months. He picked her up from the hotel and they subsequently went to a restaurant to have dinner. When they arrived at the parking area of the venue, the man pulled out a bag that contained jewelry after he saw a warning sign that said not to leave valuables inside their vehicles. While they were having dinner, Martinez asked for details about the jewelry and permission to wear it. The man didn't answer her questions, but allowed her to wear some of the items. The pair later went back to the man's apartment and the jewelry was returned to its box and placed on top of a shelf. Shortly before 5 a.m. the following morning, Martinez asked to be taken back to her hotel. Before they left, the victim apparently saw the jewelry box still on the shelf. Later that day, Martinez traveled back to Colombia. She uploaded an Instagram post and a TikTok video of her wearing the man's jewelry 2 days later. When he realized what had happened, he asked the woman via WhatsApp to return the valuable items. The woman reportedly refused, indicating it would be expensive to ship back to the States. She told him that she would bring it back a few months later in February of 2022. However, Martinez didn't fly to Miami as planned, instead going to Fort Lauderdale on September the 21st, when she was arrested. She was in custody for an immigration hold at the Paul Ryan Detention Facility in Pompano Beach when she was charged with second-degree grand theft. Number 5. Billy Appleyard and Heidi James. In August of 2022, a shoplifter bragged that he couldn't be stopped after he was confronted by an employee at a Tesco store in Coventry, England. As 25-year-old Billy Appleyard was walking out of the store carrying 6 bottles of liquor he hadn't paid for, he said, "I am invincible. I do what I want." At a boot store, Appleyard's accomplice, 23-year-old Heidi James, was seen putting several items in her bag before walking out. The pair had over 70 thefts on their records from stalls and shops across the city. When West Midlands police searched James's property, they recovered cash, a bank card, and a driver's license related to a car break-in that had occurred in the area. The following month, the 2 offenders were arrested. Appleyard was charged with 5 counts of store theft, a motor vehicle theft, and criminal damage. He was given a 9-month jail sentence with a 3-year criminal behavior order and was prohibited from entering any shops in Coventry. James, meanwhile, was charged with 2 store thefts and given an 8-month sentence. Number 4. Angelo Dante Beckford. On the night of April the 29th of 2018, in St. Petersburg, Florida, a shooting erupted from an argument between 2 people who'd only known each other for about a week. The next day, the shooter, 40-year-old Angelo Dante Beckford, invited neighbors over to his house and showed them his guns. He took them to the backyard and flaunted to them about his past as a convicted felon. He then showed them the dead body of the woman he shot the previous night. Those he invited immediately contacted law enforcement. When officers arrived at the home located at 524 16th Avenue, the suspect was gone. Later, he was found in possession of crack cocaine and arrested on drug charges. According to the police, 29-year-old Cheyenne Snyder's body was recovered from a storage area at the residence. On the morning of May the 1st of 2018, Beckford was additionally charged with aggravated assault and second-degree murder. He told investigators that Snyder, who was staying over, had made a mess of his house, leading to the contentious argument between them. Number 3. Ladarian Chandler. 33-year-old John McGee was shot by a member of a rival gang in Tampa, Florida on December the 17th of 2022 after the two had exchanged words. McGee was taken to a hospital but died 24 days later. Sheriff Grady Judd said at a press conference that the investigation into the shooting was troublesome because no one involved wanted to cooperate. Meaningful developments finally came about on February the 22nd of 2023 when 19-year-old Ladarian Chandler threatened someone with a gun near the subdivision in Lakeland, where McGee was shot. Chandler was arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Authorities subsequently discovered that he had 3 felony convictions as a juvenile. A video on his social media pages showed him rapping about shooting someone in the back, which caught the attention of detectives. Photos of himself holding firearms were also seen on his profiles. When a search warrant for his apartment was executed, ammunition in a black duffel bag was found, leading to Chandler being charged with first-degree murder in connection with McGee's slaying. According to Sheriff Judd, Chandler started crying like a baby that lost his pacifier when the charge was laid on him. As of the latest updates, the police were still trying to find the murder weapon and had offered a $5,000 reward for its recovery. Number 2. Amanda Ziminski and Clyde Forteau. Staten Island couple Amanda Ziminski and Clyde Forteau were indicted on charges of identity theft and corruption on July the 17th of 2013. The pair had been bragging online about their luxurious lifestyle, which had been made possible through their allegedly ill-gotten wealth. According to the district attorney's office, their criminal exploits began in 2008 at 3856 Highland Boulevard, where 26-year-old Ziminski, who worked as a nurse, stole around 80 elderly patients' files and gave them to her boyfriend and 3 other accomplices. With the personal information they'd gathered, they applied for credit cards, ordered debit cards, and stole their victims' tax refunds after filing income taxes in their name. According to the police, the suspects accumulated at least $675,000 and spent it on expensive items and an opulent lifestyle. When 29-year-old Clyde, together with his brother Jerome, aged 24, sat near Jay-Z at a Jets game, he flaunted it online. In June of 2012, their suspected crime ring caught investigators' attention when a new debit card was ordered from a TD bank account after the address on the account was abruptly changed from Staten Island to the Bronx. An amount under $25,000 was then withdrawn from the account over the course of 4 days. Concurrently, a purchase made to buy front row tickets to an NBA playoff game raised a red flag for authorities. The transaction was traced to Clyde's home in the Bronx. According to prosecutors, the aspiring rapper justified switching his address by claiming to have been a victim of Hurricane Sandy. Law enforcement later connected him to Ziminski, his former co-ed at the New York City College of Technology. In December of 2012, Ziminski was caught fabricating hours on her timesheet and was fired from her position at South Shore Physicians. On April the 28th of 2013, the couple went to Disney World where the man proposed. The woman posted photos showing off her engagement ring while posing at Cinderella's castle. When investigators were given a warrant to review the suspect's cell phone conversations, it was discovered that they targeted the victims of their theft scheme based on age. After the couple were arrested in July of 2013, more than 50 stolen credit cards and 20 fake driver's licenses were discovered in Clyde's car. According to the New York Daily News, Clyde and Ziminski were held in custody on $460,000 and $405,000 bonds, respectively. 3 other alleged co-conspirators, namely Clyde's brother Jerome, 25-year-old Abdul Yusuf, and Carmen Rivera, aged 52, were also arrested. They were charged with identity theft, as well as dozens of other criminal counts. Clyde pleaded guilty to third-degree grand larceny as a hate crime and enterprise corruption. According to the district attorney's office, he was given a 3.5 to 10.5-year prison sentence as punishment. In November, Jerome pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a year in prison. He was also ordered to forfeit the cash, jewelry, and merchandise recovered during the course of the investigation. In February of 2014, Yusuf pleaded guilty to attempted enterprise corruption and was sentenced to 9 months behind bars. In June, Ziminski pleaded guilty to second-degree grand larceny and was given a sentence of 2 to 3 years in prison. Additionally, the convicted couple were ordered to reimburse Ziminski's former employer to the tune of $15,000. If you missed our video on when showing off goes wrong, then we have that coming up for you right after number 1. Number 1. Nilsa Anderson. A 25-year-old American actress was arrested by St. Petersburg police in Pinellas County, Florida, at around 1:40 a.m. on July the 6th of 2019. Nilsa Anderson, known by her stage name Nilsa Anderson, got the attention of a crowd at a downtown St. Petersburg bar after she exposed her breasts while standing on a balcony. According to authorities, when police later led the woman to a vehicle, she started acting hostile and erratic. Law enforcement said that Anderson appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. Later, while she was speaking with officers inside the car, she began kicking the rear driver's side window, which shattered, at which point she knocked broken glass into the street. Anderson was taken into custody on disorderly conduct and exposure charges and was held on a $400 bond before being released the next morning. Number 9. Jorge Alberto Lopez Amores. On June the 18th of 2014, Mexican man Jorge Alberto Lopez Amores went missing in the ocean after jumping from a cruise ship while showing off for a female passenger. Amores was aboard the MSC Divinia which was traveling through Brazil's coastal waters. The 28-year-old soccer fan, reported as the son of a wealthy lawyer, had been drinking while celebrating his team's performance in the World Cup. He'd been seen talking to a female passenger. He was heard saying to her, "I am so happy that I can fly. Look at me." Then he stuck his arms out and jumped from the ship's 15th deck. Amores hit the water and then disappeared into the foam created in the ship's wake. It took over an hour for the Divinia to maneuver back to his last known sighting. By that time, he was nowhere to be found. Aside from the dangers associated with the high jump itself, Brazil's coastal waters are known for strong currents and the presence of sharks. Amores' body was never found, but he's presumed dead. Number 8. Ellie Bryan. In November of 2019, 18-year-old Ellie Bryan suffered fatal injuries in a car crash on the outskirts of Aberystwyth, Wales. Bryan and 2 other passengers were in a Vauxhall Astra driven by 19-year-old Dylan Benjamin. Bryan, who sat in the back seat, wasn't wearing a seatbelt. A 5th member of their group, Lena Evans, was driving a Vauxhall Corsa. It was reported that the others were trying to get away from Evans after previously having thrown a firecracker at her car. When someone had made a comment about Evans following too closely behind, Benjamin decided to demonstrate his driving skills, reportedly saying, "I will show you how to lose her." He accelerated fiercely on the A487, but lost control of the vehicle at a sharp right bend. The Astra collided with a roadside tree before veering across the road and into an oncoming Audi. All 4 people in the car were severely hurt, but Bryan unfortunately didn't recover. Benjamin himself was left with brain injuries and spent 2 weeks in an induced coma. A judge would later conclude that his fatal decision to show off had been the main factor in the accident, and he was sentenced to over 3 years in prison. Number 7. Sifiso Longelow Thabete. In 2017, a promising bodybuilder from Durban, South Africa died from injury sustained in a failed backflip attempt. At the community center where the bodybuilding competition was held, the crowd cheered 23-year-old Sifiso Longelow Thabete on as an announcer listed his accomplishments. Thabete, an IFBB junior world champion, began waving his arms and engaging the audience. He then ran towards the center of the mat and launched himself into a backflip. Sadly, the muscular athlete didn't complete the rotation and landed on his head, breaking his neck. Some of those in attendance rushed to help him as he lay motionless on his side before rolling onto his back. A video of the incident became viral, and Thabete was ridiculed for showing off by a number of online commenters before the full extent of the failed backflip was revealed. Shortly after the incident, Thabete was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Number 6. Viagra overdose amputation. In 2013, a man from Gigante, Colombia, deliberately overdosed on Viagra pills while trying to impress his girlfriend. The unnamed 66-year-old, reported as being a farmer and former politician, was forced to seek medical help after several days spent in agony in which he'd started to develop signs of gangrene. Doctors in Gigante referred him to a medical facility in Neiva, where staff noted his manhood was inflamed and fractured. They determined amputation as the only possible course of action in order to prevent the gangrene from spreading to other parts of his body. After the procedure was successfully completed, the patient started to recover with only some bruising. It wasn't the first reported case of Viagra gone wrong. While preparing for the first night with his wife as a marital couple, a Yemeni man took 5 pills at once. After the wedding hall was cleared, the unnamed 25-year-old went with his wife to their new home. He collapsed upon arrival and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors were unable to revive him. Number 5. Escalator arm break. On Valentine's Day 2017, a man broke his arm while trying to impress a woman through a stunt that involved riding down the escalator. Their identities weren't revealed, but a video of the incident subsequently became viral and was picked up by several media outlets. The young woman was the first to grip the railing as she went down the escalator backwards. She then lifted her skirt and briefly flashed her bum for the camera. The man, presumably emboldened by what he'd seen, sat on the other railing with his hands behind his head. Unfortunately, the railing was too narrow, and he failed to properly balance his body on it. A loud "Oh my God" was heard off screen as he fell an estimated 10 feet on the other side of the escalator. He landed feet first, but the momentum carried him forward, and his arm gruesomely bent backwards upon impact, leaving him with a fracture. Number 4. Lindsay Young. In April of 2011, James Perkins asked Lindsay Young if she wanted a ride on his quad bike near a caravan park in Northumberland, England. Prior to extending his offer, 30-year-old Perkins had been showing off to Young and her friends by performing tricks on the vehicle. Young, who was 9 years his junior, accepted the ride and refused when asked if she wanted a helmet. It's believed that Perkins attempted another trick, trying to impress the young woman, at which point he lost control of the bike. Young fell from it and died instantly. Perkins was airlifted to a hospital after suffering severe injuries, including a fractured cheek and eye socket. It was later revealed that he had cannabis and diazepam in his bloodstream. According to the judge that subsequently presided over his case, Perkins should have known how unsuitable his offer had been because his quad bike steered through the rear wheels and was specifically designed for one person. He was sentenced to 6 years behind bars. Number 3. Natalia Borosovna Borodina. In October of 2017, a Russian woman died during a holiday to the Dominican Republic after hanging out of a car window. 35-year-old Natalia Borosovna Borodina had taken the top of her bikini off and was playing it up for the camera. Her friend, Ivana Borachuk, aged 32, was filming her and was also reported to have been driving the car at the time. After looking into the camera with her finger in her mouth, Borodina leaned her upper body even further out of the open window. Within moments, she smashed her head on a road sign, sustaining devastating injuries. She was pronounced dead at a Punta Cana hospital. The harrowing video of the incident was picked up by multiple media outlets. Borachuk was arrested on suspicion of drunk driving, but later cleared of all charges. Number 2. Harry Houdini. Aside from his renowned death-defying acts, escape artist Harry Houdini was also known for the strength of his abdominal muscles, said to have been capable of withstanding any blow. Houdini would often show off physical prowess by asking people to punch him in the stomach. In 1926, he was resting on a couch in his dressing room at the Princess Theatre in Montreal, having broken his ankle during a performance several days earlier. He was approached by a man named Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead, who asked him if he believed in the miracles of the Bible and if the stories regarding the imperviousness of his stomach were true. Houdini told him that it could endure a lot. The escape artist didn't have time to get up and brace himself when Whitehead suddenly started throwing hard, hammer-like punches to his abdomen. Eyewitness reports claim that Houdini winced at every blow before gesturing to Whitehead to stop, explaining he hadn't had time to prepare. As the evening unfolded, the escape artist performed while in great pain. His state deteriorated over the next few days. Doctors told him he'd developed acute appendicitis and that he needed urgent surgery. Houdini refused and went on with the show at the Garrick Theatre in Detroit, Michigan, even though he had a fever of 104 Fahrenheit. He passed out during the performance, but was revived and kept going. Once the show was over, he was taken to a Detroit hospital, where he died on October the 31st at the age of 52. Number 1. Pop Smoke. In February of 2020, only a few weeks after his mixtape had debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 chart, US rapper Bashar Baraka Jackson, better known as Pop Smoke, was gunned down in a home invasion. At the time, Jackson was renting a house in Hollywood Hills. In the early morning of February the 19th, several masked men entered the home through a second-story balcony. Jackson was in the shower at the time, and the intruders held a gun to the head of a woman who was staying with him, telling her to keep quiet. As the others moved through the house, the woman heard Jackson screaming and the sound of a gunshot. 2 of the intruders reportedly started kicking him after he'd fallen to the ground. He managed to make his way downstairs, but not before 2 more shots sounded off. The intruders fled the scene and the woman found Jackson on the ground. The 20-year-old had suffered multiple gunshot wounds and was later pronounced dead at a local hospital. His killers, 2 of whom were juveniles, were arrested and charged with murder. The youngest of the attackers, an unnamed 15-year-old, would later confess to a cellmate that he'd shot Jackson over a diamond-studded Rolex. He said that the rapper had complied with their demands at first, but that he then tried to fight them, at which point he was pistol-whipped and shot with a Beretta M9. The LAPD initially believed it to have been a targeted attack due to Jackson's alleged connections to the Crips. However, further details emerged that pointed to a robbery gone wrong. The day before his murder, Jackson had posted several images and videos to his social media, showing off the gifts he'd received for charting on Billboard. Some showed the house's address in the background, while others featured it on the packaging, thus revealing his location. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have a lot of friends who brag all the time, or have one friend who has nothing to brag about? Let us know in the comments section below.